everybody. This is Severen Henderson, your host of the Fire Podcast, fueling innovation, resilience, and excellence. This podcast was recorded around Christmas of 24. I'm just now getting around to putting it out. This is around January of 25, a couple weeks into the year already. So for those of you who haven't heard me or haven't seen, Happy New Year. I'm glad we all made it here to 25, and so far, so good. Again, I recorded this podcast with Bryan Velez, former Chicago firefighter and officer. He retired, and we talk about his journey and what he's into right now. He's a training officer, and we discuss a lot of things that go on with fire in this particular episode. So I hope that you are able to get something from it, that you learn something from it. Other than that, without too much more to be said, I'll let the episode speak for itself. I'll come back at the end to drop some other interesting notes for the upcoming year of 2025. Bryan Velez, of which new fire department? You used to former Chicago firefighter, fire lieutenant, right? You left
Correct.
as a lieutenant, and now what's the name of the department now?
So I'm the training captain for Oldsmar Fire Rescue, which is right at the top of Tampa Bay.
Okay, sweet. How long have you been there? And I have a show sheet that I give people when they first come on that I just recreated today, being very transparent. Mm-hmm. But in it, you say that you did something that was impossible and got all your certifications in Florida. So tell me about that, please.
Yeah, so we always came to Florida. We always went to Florida for vacation, and just it's crazy because you think of Florida, you think, man, you're living it, you're staying on the beach, you're enjoying the weather, you're not dealing with the traffic the day in, day out, going to work and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know what? I kind of like this, so let's move down to Florida. Mm-hmm. So what I ended up doing is I retired November 11th of 21, and then I started with Oldsmar December 6th of 2021. So there wasn't
no downtime.
No, none at all. So,
okay.
But in the process, originally my son was going through the fire academy. They do things a little bit different. So you go through a college course, and then you get your certificate of compliance, which is our Firefighter 2.
Right.
And so while he was going through their college course, which was Hillsborough Community College, mm-hmm. I stopped in there one day because I'm like, oh man, I could probably come down here and teach just as a side hustle or mm-hmm. whatever. And so I asked the guy, what do I need to do to become an instructor down here? He said, you got to get your state cert, and then you got to be a instructor 1. So I'm like, well, all right, that shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah. Well,
then I realized how much of a pain in the butt it was. You know what I'm saying? So, what ended up happening was, it's just because you're a Chicago fireman, you crawled hallways for 25 years, don't mean nothing out there.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Yes, keep going.
So what ended up happening was I looked into it, and that was right around COVID, mm-hmm. right? So I knew I was going to retire in 21 because then I'd have 25 years, I'd be 50, I'd be able to collect my pension, mm-hmm. and then just use a side gig just to supplement my income.
Right.
My wife's a nurse, so we knew she was going to find a job no matter where she went. So I started the whole process, and man, everybody kept telling you, bro, it's unbelievable how difficult it is to actually do it. I'm like, well, how difficult can it be? People do it all the time.
Yeah, state to state.
Yeah, you would think it would, pro board or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. So you had to go through this whole process of going through and showing how many hours you had for training. Mm-hmm. Now, those were like training hours, not EMS. Those were fire training hours. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I want to say it was 450 hours that you had mm-hmm. That you had to have going towards your Fire 2.
Okay.
And so what I ended up doing was I went to the academy, and I think we kind of talked because back then you were at the academy just doing some stuff. So you put me in contact and gathered all that information.
Yep.
Because at the time, who was the director? It was
I think Chief Clay.
Clay,
Yeah.
correct. So so we went through that whole process. I had to get how many hours I did on ladders, how many hours I did in orientation, and all that stuff. So and surprisingly enough, the state of Illinois has a pretty good log on all of the amount of hours that you have for Fire 2. And with the Chicago Fire Academy, we were over almost like 500 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was close.
Close to the top, yeah.
So I had enough hours to really get to meet the requirement, which was 450. But that is just to start the whole process. Because what they would do is once you turned in this application for it, then what they would do is they say, okay, here he has so many hours in this. Well, we require this. So they went through and they just nitpicked everything, right? And plus you had to have your wildland firefighting and all that stuff. So anyways, and then now during COVID, nobody's in the office, trying to, send my stuff from Chicago to Florida and all these other things. So, but the bottom line, it took me about a year and a month to get all that stuff organized so that I can get my certificate of compliance, which is my Fire 2. And then once I got that, then I was able to get everything else. And that really just started the ball. So you really need to start off getting your certificate of compliance. And then from there, then you can move forward on all your other, a lot of it, they'll give you reciprocity. But you have to show that you meet the JPRs and all that, the job requirements and stuff like that. So
Florida's a big time state, and they are ahead of the curve when it comes to different fire stuff. I remember when I was taking tests, that was 20 years ago now. Wow. But when I was taking tests all over the place, down in Florida, they had a county system like before anybody had a county system. Well, I shouldn't say anybody, but they had where you take a test for different places off of one test. So instead of going to each individual city or suburb and taking tests, you would just take one test and they would put out your results to different fire departments to kind of pick and choose from.
Really?
Yeah. So when I was in Ohio, we had a couple guys that ended up moving to Florida. I haven't kept contact with them, but a couple guys moved to Florida just from doing that same thing. We were at a little small part-time department. It was kind of like a clubhouse. And we was just taking tests all over the country. And that's how I ended up in Chicago. We came on vacation, me and my buddies, in 2006, took the test, and I got a call, and the rest is history. But back to you and your career. So 25-year member, like you said, one thing that Chicago does have that I don't think Chicago firefighters notice is that you said the perfect statement is that just because you've been crawling hallways 25 years in Chicago, that don't mean nothing to the rest of the country or anybody. So tell me more about that, kind of how the transition has been with you being a training officer now versus being a frontline firefighter and then officer.
It's interesting because, yes, I mean, your experience does count, right? Without a doubt.
Right.
So because, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, many departments don't have the amount of work that Chicago has, right? So, spending all those years on the squads, I was able to see different parts of the city and get that firsthand experience where that's, the rest of the country really is, they're geared more towards, hey, what kind of certifications do you have? What type of education do you have? Where I thought, well, what really matters is your experience. Well, you got to have a combination of both, right? So going down to Florida, there aren't many areas that are busy. Right, so you have some of your bigger cities that have their departments, like St. Pete. They have their areas that are busier. Clearwater has their, and at least just in Pinellas County, because that's where we're at.
Okay.
But the transition it's different. I'm not used to, like, for instance, we just know that, hey, if you're on a truck, you're going to the roof and you're going to ventilate.
Yep.
Right? Their ventilation, or at least that type of ventilation, just isn't their go-to.
Okay.
Right. So learning that, there's a huge learning curve going from a big city like Chicago to an Oldsmar that's one station. It has 15 guys total, and most of the time it's 3 guys per day.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it was a eye-opening experience, and I'm humbled by the experience that I received here in Chicago. But there's a different type of experience that you need in Florida, right?
Yes.
Because we don't have day-to-day humidity like it's out there. You open up the front door and you get blasted with that humidity. You know what I'm saying? So,
we don't have gators either, except for that one time somebody put the gator in the pond.
yeah, over
Remember
in
that?
Humboldt Park.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
and the guy had to come in. They got him from Australia to come in and get the gator out, and then he was like a local Chicago celebrity for a little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have that either. And like another thing you were talking about, wildland firefighting. In the BOF, so I've been at the academy for long enough that I've gotten to the point where I don't have to pick straws for what to teach anymore. But that was like the short stick. If you got that one, like, oh God, I gotta go and mess with all these tools that we never use, we never see, and you have to actually teach that to the candidates because that's on their BOF test here. So it's not in depth, but it's just enough to say, hey, we taught them some wildland things.
Well, the funny thing about that is, right, so we think of prairie fires, right? So the other day we were, the group of us, so we have a North County group of instructors that teaches 6 different departments. So it's ourselves, Palm Harbor, Dunedin, East Lake, Tarpon Springs, and one other department. So we were just talking about, because there was a brush fire. Now they call them brush fire. You and I, we call it prairie fire, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is that these brush fires, like, you could have the palmettos, which are green, right? And they produce their own fuel because of the oils that are in there. So, like, you and I would say, all right, we're good over here because that's green, so that's not going to burn.
Yeah, it's not going to burn.
Well,
right.
Not out there, right? So you traditionally, or you really have to think about working from the black. You know what I mean? Yeah. Always working towards the fingers and all the other stuff. So there's so much of a learning curve. 2.5-story frames and single families.
Exactly. You looking at the houses, looking at the cribs. You thinking high rise. You thinking, like you said, 2.5-story frame. Your bread and butter fire. What we think is a bread and butter fire, totally different in different areas. So that's with this podcast and the show. That's kind of what I like to emphasize on, that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's a bunch of different cats out there.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many different ways to do things effectively and properly that are all the right and correct way. It's just for where you're at based on what you got going on. So thanks for answering that. But let's talk a little bit more about your career when you were in the city. So where did you start off? Where did you end up? What we know that you retired and you left, but kind of take us through your career trajectory.
All right. So I started off 1996. So I was a second class off that new list, right? The 95 list.
95 list.
So I came in October 1 of 96. And back then, you only had to do 3 months, right? So it came October, and then we graduated in January, and I ended up going to Engine 28. 28's over there in Bridgeport area. I was hoping to get into the 4th District. I got into the 4th District, but it just happened to be on in the 15th Battalion. Okay. So a little bit slower, but what a great opportunity, right? Because you think about how those little things. Maybe we didn't get that Tower 14 right off the bat, and maybe we didn't get the 117 or wherever you're looking to go initially. But if you kept the vision and like the goal of like, hey, I want to learn this job, I want to learn my craft, I want to be able to go anywhere in the city and be able to handle myself accordingly, right? So I went to Engine 28, which we weren't busy at all. I mean, maybe a couple runs here and there, but no fire, not a lot of fire duty. But it kept that drive for me to be like, all right, cool. I got to go to somewhere busy. I want to go to the squad, right? So what ended up happening is I probably had about maybe a year and a half at Engine 28, and an opportunity came to go to hazmat. Right? So I'm like, all right, it's maybe not I'm not going to learn fires, but if I want to go to the squad, right? Because I was
That's a
taking all these
component.
classes, it's a part of it. So sometimes you got to eat a little of the stuff that don't taste so well before you can get to the pie, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, cool. So I went to hazmat, and what a great opportunity that was. And I look back at my career, and I've really been blessed because I was able to experience things that, if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have had this experience, right? So, lo and behold, I go to hazmat. Chief Eversole had asked me to go down to hazmat, and I worked with Gene Ryan. Gene Ryan, and I don't know if you ever worked with him, but what a brilliant man, And
I just saw his name all the time when I was coming through the door. So yeah,
brother, I'll tell you what, man, he was on point, and he was the kind of officer that would, if we had, say, I don't know, an ammonia leak or something like that. He just talk about, and back then there was only one hazmat team, so you're going from the south end to the north end, east side, west side. You know what I mean? So, but he was the kind of guy that would take the time to teach you about hazmat. So, yeah, granted, we weren't going to fires, but I learned. You know what I mean? And there's mentors out there that are just going to teach you, and that was his craft, baby. He knew, you talk about the Draeger system, you talk about monitoring air and set up the hot, warm, and cold zones. And set. So all that stuff, which really, if you think about it, you need to have that kind of experience. Especially if you're going to go to the squad, right? Because the squad really is six different lieutenants.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what the captain said to me. He said the unit is really like 6 different lieutenants. Everybody needs to know what they're doing and everything else. So, yep, that's
absolutely
nail on the head.
Absolutely. So, I spent maybe about four months there, and I was like, I'm chomping at the bit. I only got, under 2 years, and I still want to go to fires. I'm not going to fires. So I had a great conversation with Gene, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to 28. Back during that time, I had a great relationship with Ray Roscoe, right?
Okay.
So Ray, what a fabulous, fabulous leader, And he's like, Brian, he goes, I'm not sure if hazmat's really where you want to go, but I understand you wanting to learn that part of the job, because you're going to need to learn that. So anyways, I met him from being at Engine 28. So he was relieving in like the 15th Battalion at the time and whatever. So anytime I got a chance to go to Truck 33 or 49's house or whatever, I always took that detail, being in the 15th Battalion. That was the 15th back then. So I told Ray, I go, hey, I think it's time for me to come back. He goes, I knew it would be short-lived. I'm just glad you didn't say, hey, I'm just going to focus on this because, whatever. So I spent about 4 months, and I ended up going back to Engine 28. So I spent probably about another 3 months there, and all of a sudden I get a phone call, a front phone, or maybe the Marshall line, whatever, and it's Eversole again. He goes, hey, Brian, he goes, I want to know if you want to take a detail. I'm like, you don't want me to go back to hazmat, do you? Right? And he goes, no. He goes, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if you want to go to Squad 7. And I'm like, oh, man, that wasn't really, I was hoping Squad 5, Squad 2, whatever. But he was like, hey, go to Squad 7. He goes, this way you'll get all the classes. You'll be able to, get into the mix. And, you'll take details throughout. So I'm like, oh, well, you know what? It's a win-win, right? So I get the classes because I've been taking the classes and I've been paying for them on my own.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So
back
this was
then,
before grant money.
Exactly. So we're talking, let's see, maybe 2000, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So I took a detail to Squad 7, and I spent a year and a month there on a detail. And lo and behold, I had about 4.5 years on a job, and then I ended up getting Squad 5.
Okay.
So,
sweet.
yeah. So, like I said, all that experience, and it's not even so much the work that you did, but it's the learning. It's the people that you were with, the leadership, getting out there and because as well as I do, you get on the squad, it's a smaller unit, so you're responding a wider area, so you're meeting a lot more different people, and they see your behavior or they see how you handle situations, which can help you later on in your career.
Yeah, I miss being a part of that because, like I was telling you, I just got promoted. Well, I shouldn't say just. It was in March. It's about to be a year now. But just that camaraderie, hanging out with guys, just because I went from Truck 29, great truck, great house, to Squad 1. So I went from just two outstanding companies. I've been really blessed and lucky and fortunate, all of those good words, to go there. And I do kind of miss that. So it's like now I got to go to places on purpose, like party time. And it's a little bit different, but to me, it's nothing like hanging out with people that you have a everyday mission. You don't know what the mission is yet until the call comes in, but the everyday mission. And then I love how you described it. You're going to responding in bigger areas and bigger things. When people ask me what I do, well, what I used to do on the fire department, I always say, well, we like the TV show. All that stuff you see on the TV show that they made up, that's the stuff that they stole our stories. Speaking of that, they stole my name. I always say that to the end of time. They stole my name for that show. But you worked with the show. I saw that in the notes that you said you worked on the show the first, would you say 5 years?
First 5 years.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So Steve, Chief Chickarota, another great mentor of mine. He, with him being the writer and the technical advisor, he actually was the one, because he was down at the academy when I was going through the academy, and I was like, man, I don't know how to get to the squad. What do I got to do? And he just told me, just take classes, help me build my resume, and all that stuff. So before the show started, all the actors rode with us on the squad. So at that point, I was on Squad 2, and so he had us ride. He had all the guys ride with us over at Squad 2. They went to Squad 5, rode over there and stuff. And so I got an opportunity to meet the actors. And then, Steve was like, hey, listen, you're going to be part of the, the crew. So, because we would hang out on the off days too, so us and all the actors and stuff, they're just great people. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I don't know if you haven't had a chance to meet them personally, but, just great dudes and girls, you know what I'm saying? So, so I did for the first almost 5 years until I got promoted, because back then, on the squad, you know how it is. Guys are getting in early, before early bird catches the worm. So guys didn't have a problem getting in early to relieve you to get to where you needed to be, because they started filming at around 6, so you had to check
we'd
in.
be before then. We'd be in at 5:35 sometimes, right, depending on what's going on. Because then you catch those like sneaky fires and blip, blip, blip. You hear the alarm go off, you come downstairs and somebody done already took your stuff off and they headed out the door. And headed to go get coffee and go home. So
yes, sir.
I know exactly how that goes. But another thing that was just awesome about the people that are on the show, the one guy, I don't know his name. I just know he was on Sex in the City. I should
Dave Eigenberg.
Yes, I should try and get to meet him like one day in real life. But I was teaching down at IFSI, and he came down there to do the fire camp. He really is dedicated to the fire mission overall. So like you were saying, all of the actors that have been on that show, none of them have been like crazy and diva-ish or anything like that. They're all, like you said, really cool, down-to-earth people.
And they really wanted to portray what we do.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So they wanted to give an honest like portrayal of what we did and what our mission is and how we act and all that, and they would they would be like, all right, well, hey, how come this, or what does this look like, or hey, if I'm holding this, does this look right, or like they would really want to portray an image. Because the Chicago Fire Department does have the pride and the traditions and stuff like that. So even like Jesse Spencer, when because Jesse and I had a great relationship, and he ended up wearing. So I wore a flag, American flag, on my turnout coat, and bunker coat, and he's like, "Oh, I want a flag like that." So I ended up getting him a flag, and they ended up putting it on his
sweet.
uniform in the show. And so we would come there. Now, mind you, we were going to some work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and then we would take our gear and then wear it on set. So,
Oh,
there'd
it
be-
would look totally different. I know, I remember, and sometimes I still see it. It was a guy in my old house. He used to be an extra in the background. I remember specifically he was on the episode where one of the girls did something, and she brought beer to the crew, and they were filming at Engine 4, Tower 10, and he was sitting there with the beer, and then he had whatever truck they have on his helmet, and he would wear that helmet to real fires when we were at work. So yeah,
Spanish guy?
yeah.
Yeah. I forget his
Fernando.
name. Fernando, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, he was on there quite a bit, and
Yep.
it was funny because you show up and you come from a extra alarm or whatever stinking, and your gear's just full of soot or whatever, and they're like, hey, we got to make that look the same. So
Yeah.
because they were asking, hey, what do you do? Are you chimney sweeping or what?
Like, are you rolling around in dirt and fire? Like, no, this is just going.
Exactly.
This is showing up.
And that's like the attention to detail that they had. Like, they seriously want to portray us like what it really is. So they would have these little socks or whatever, and then just hit dust and stuff on their gear. So they but I've got a picture of Taylor Kinney and I sitting. We were doing a train incident where there was a kid that was hit by a train, and so we're sitting on the just like on a little concrete barrier right there by the train tracks, and we must have had a good worker or whatever, because I just got my pants on and they're just full of soot and whatever, and sitting next to him, and his is all shiny and stuff like that, and I remember reading some of the captions said, "Yeah, you can tell who the real firefighter
Yep,
is."
I remember seeing those pictures. Yeah.
So, but they wanted it. They wanted to do exactly, give us justice and give us what, portray us in the correct light. So, just phenomenal people.
And I think they do an outstanding job at that. That show, a lot of guys that are actual on the job, they like to make fun of it, but at the same time, this is giving us the best publicity and showing us in such a good light. I don't see how you can hate on it no time. But that's just me. I'm the unhater.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, if they really portrayed what we did, it would be a radio show, right? Because you wouldn't be able to see nothing.
Yes, it wouldn't. Yes, it'd be rated R. It wouldn't be on NBC. So put it like that. Now, another episode that I saw, and it tricked me because I'm not going to lie, I don't keep up with it and watch it from week to week. So sometimes I'll see like a syndicated episode. And I thought the one guy died, the other lieutenant, because they had this big ceremony outside of the house. And they said, we just here to honor. And then he just came and walked up. I'm like, oh, sweet, he didn't die. But what made me think about you and the notes that you gave me is being a part of the honor guard, because everybody was so dressed up. Everybody looks professional, looks great. We do a lot of honor guard things for the beginning of football games, when we have members pass, everything else. Tell me, and I remember you coming in and teaching some guys, how to go through the motions. I think that was like right before you had left. So can you tell me about your honor guard experience?
Yeah, so Pat Maloney was instrumental in getting all of us, the guys from the squad, and who had military background, involved with the honor guard. Artie Aranda, since I've left, is pretty much taken over the role that I used to do. Him and Steve Kendrick are now taking over all that responsibility. But back then, Pat and myself would really do all of the training, all of the just getting members in, interviewing, and Harold Turrentine back then. Because when Harold left, then I took over Harold's spot. But it started off with Pat, because Pat, he's our captain on Squad 2,
right?
And he's looking to fill the membership with military, and all of us almost all of us on Squad 2 on the third shift were all prior military. So myself, Kenny Duraz, Art Aranda, Clay Clay, let's see, Joey Martinelli. All of us were in the military. So I really wanted to give back, and that's why I joined it. I was like, man, because I really want, and man, the amount of line of duty deaths. So yes, we not only do we do the line of duty deaths, but then we also do, like you said, sporting events, Cubs games, Sox games, the Battle of the Badges, all that stuff. So, and you need, because you got to give the family the respect and that they've earned and deserve.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that was my drive. My drive was like, I want to be a lasting memory for a family member that and give them what they deserve.
Yeah.
So those precision marks, that military bearing, that professionalism that each one of those guys portrays is just phenomenal. So I wanted to be a part of that, and did almost 20 years with that.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of line of duty deaths. So
last year was especially difficult for us. We had the F.I.R.E in 2023. About to be a different year now, but and then having the members come from the company to practice with them too, and I was still at the academy then. I had to open up a few days when we weren't usually open for members to come in and practice. They practice with the casket and everything, and one of the, not saying that everybody is going to be an honor guard member, but one of the things that I stress to the candidates in the academy while they're there, socks and having your 2 pins and having your thing. Like, people think it's silly. People think it's stupid. Why do I got to wear black socks? What is wrong with white socks? Just stuff like that. And my thing is always to them, if you can't do the little things like this, how can we expect you to do the big things later on? And those little attention to detail, knowing how to salute properly, knowing how to stand properly, that provides so much closure and respect to a family that the last thing you want to offer a family is a bad showing. And I think if you just pay attention to those small things equal big things, then you can be on your way. So,
without a doubt, and going to the academy and just prepping, because this stuff doesn't just happen, right? So nobody's always over there taking engine 4 or whatever and cleaning it up and to make sure that it's ready for to put a casket on there. And there's how many people that you need to actually raise a casket and put it on there, and how many, because there's so many times, right? It's a big event that there could be a picture taken and
you're not even right. Yes.
Exactly. So if you're not squared away, covered in a line, and then you look like you're not giving the respect to the family that they've earned.
Yeah.
So so there are a lot of times that you'll hear some of those guys with the little red, things that are hanging on their shoulders that are yelling. They're not yelling, but correcting members. Not wearing sunglasses with their uniform, and just making sure that your cover is squared away, and that you're covering in line, and you're going down the gathering and making sure that all the officers are in the front. And we understand that, companies want to stick together and that you want this, but it's not about you, right? It's about the family, right? Yep. So, and it's nothing personal, and we can have a beer afterwards and shoot the shit or whatever. But at that point, when the honor guard is just trying to square things up, it's for a reason, right? Because that picture that gets taken, and Tim Oak, who does a phenomenal job, him and Gordy and all those guys that just do an awesome job of handing out those pictures and sending them to the family, like, they look at that and they see that paramilitary organization, and it just gives you a sense of pride, and they earned that, right? You know what I mean? So I loved it, and but it took a lot of time, right? It took a lot of time out of your family life and so on and so forth. So, but it's all good.
Yep,
they earned it.
There you go. It's all good. They earned it. So, one more topic that I really want to hit. We were talking about line of duty deaths and everything. You were an officer for a line of duty death. What can you tell me from that experience? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase the question. Just the fact that something happened, line of duty death. You were the officer that day. That's probably one of the most dreaded things for anybody that's in charge over other people for the day. Just tell me about that experience.
So, Danny Capuano, right?
Capuano, right? I should.
Danny, what a great dude. You know, just Danny was awesome. So when I was on Squad 5, Danny came there on Ambulance 49 when he came over as a crossover medic. Well, he went there as a medic.
Right.
And so I met Danny his first day on 49. So Danny was just one of those guys, man. No matter how much they ran, he was still all about the fire department, right? Mm-hmm. So we would sit down and shoot the shed and do all that stuff. And he built, so on the side of Squad 5's house, there was, we called it a crematorium. It was basically a brick oven that we that we used to cook out there. And Danny helped build that, you know. And Danny was just, you talk about attention to detail. Danny was that guy, you know. So throughout our careers, after I left Squad 5 and went to Squad 2, Danny crossed over and then went to Engine 88. And I was always looking to, you know, to work for guys or whatever. So, and he was the same way. So he'd always call me, hey, Bri, you know, want to do a trade? So he left 88 and then went to Truck 24. And then I think he went to Tower 34.
Okay.
I believe that's, I didn't follow his whole career, but maybe went to Truck 24, maybe went to Tower 34. But I know he ended up going to Tower 34.
Right.
So once I got promoted, I was relieving. And, you know, right before I got promoted, I wanted, because I had spent so many years, I'd spent almost 17 years in special operations. I wanted to go into, you know, a busy truck, right? Because I wanted that first in.
Busy truck. That's my dream as well.
Mm-hmm. So Tower 14 was that was the place where I wanted to go. Yeah. You know, my uncle was there, and so I wanted to go there for multiple reasons. So went to Tower 14, only spent a little bit of time there, probably less than a year, and then I got promoted. So when I got promoted, I ended up floating in the 6th District. So because I had tower experience at the time, Mike Altman was the battalion chief in the 23rd. Yep. So Mike had asked me to come over and sit on Tower 34. Mm-hmm. So I sat on there because John Schooneman had retired at that time. And so, you know, and what a great group of dudes there too, man. I just love every one of those guys. They're just, you know, from Farmer to the guys that would come across from 72 and Danny and you know, all those guys. They were just great guys. So I love going to work there, you know, because we were going to work. You know, that tower was going. They were busy.
Yep.
You know,
on that Angle Street and get going,
bro. I'll tell you what. You can hit anywhere in the city from that you know, South Chicago, right?
Yep.
So you know, Danny was the kind of guy that, you know, the attention to detail, right? So he was the guy that would do the inventory, and he'd be like, yo, hey, Brian, we're missing an elevator key. And I'm like, who checks the elevator keys? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, Danny did. You know what I'm saying? So he was on point, knew the game, been around fire, so he knew the job. So that day we ended up with 2 fires, right? So we had a fire right around dinner time, just a typical truck fire. They were stealing borrowing the electric, and they charged up all of the BX. So that it was a typical truck fire where you had to overhaul everything and just a beat down, right? Yep. So we had that, and then they did a one-man watch there. So you know, I don't know, we got back probably right around after dinner, and then the fire comes in. Well, prior to the fire, I was laying in the bed, and the tower's office, or the officer's room, was right on South Chicago. So I heard the ambo, and I'm like, oh, Danny's on watch. Maybe he didn't hear him. So I walk in there and like, yo, Danny, he ambo's back. So he was out, you know, because we all just
got beat up.
Right? Yeah. So went back to bed, and you know, a couple hours later, we get the fire. Right. So it came in with wrong address, you know, typical. Somebody saw some smoke, whatever, gave the wrong address. So they corrected it a few times. And so being on the tower, after hearing the size up, I'm figuring, okay, well, we got to set up the tower for defensive operations just in case, because it was a warehouse, right? So as we pull in, and there's so many things that, like, I think back now and I think about, you know, like how all this stuff happened, but you know, there's so many signs, and you got to pick up on those little things, right? So just pulling up into that parking garage that we were, or that the parking area, there was a small dumpster there. So I should have thought about that, right? So it was under demolition. So what ended up happening was, I sent 2 guys to the roof, and then Danny and Timmy Quinn were with me. So Mike tells us, hey, force entry on the Bravo side. There was a big gate. So truck 17 was there. Huner was he was on that side, and he actually snapped the lock, and we opened up the door. So as we opened up the door, or opened up that gate, I can see that half the roll-up door was already gone. So they were scrapping all the metal, right? Okay. So all these things that I should have probably thought about. So as I'm walking in there, and you know how it is. You put your mask on when you need it, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm not condoning that.
That's not right.
You know what I'm saying, right? But that was the culture, right? That was the culture that we did. And it's funny, I go out to Florida, and my first fire, because I run command out there, and I'm inside the building, and I got nothing on,
running around,
eyes are watering,
out in the parking lot with your mask on.
So, but anyway, so I remember. Walking, because I was in the front, walking in there, I'm thinking, I better throw my mask on, because I've been to a couple of these, and I don't want a headache all night, you know what I mean? So I throw it on, and I tell the guys, mask up, right? So we're going to do a search, because Mike's like, hey, we can't find a fire, and it was a big, 300 by 100, whatever it was. So I'm scanning, so I made it all the way to the Delta wall, back to Alpha, and as I'm coming back to Bravo, I hear him, the chief say, hey, fire's up on looks like it's upstairs. So I had just run by some construction stairs that were going up to the stairs, because they removed all the stairs. So, but the visibility probably on the first floor was maybe, 10, 15 feet, you know what I'm saying? So, but so I'm like, all right, tower, let's get up to the second floor. Now, mind you, I've got the camera, so I'm just kind of zooming. So I see some figures coming. So I'm like, all right, cool. The boys are with me. We're going to get upstairs. And I got an extra guy with me, probably from truck 17. Because that's the one thing about technology is great, but it doesn't give you the full picture, right? It doesn't tell you who's who, right?
Yeah.
It just tells you
pieces
images. Yep, pieces of the puzzle. Perfect. So I'm climbing up the stairs, going up the stairs, and all of a sudden now I probably got inches, right? Cold smoke, but inches of visibility. So I'm like, well, shit, let me turn around and make sure I got my guy. So I turn around and I scan the thing. So I got 3 heads, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. I got Timmy, I got Danny, and I probably got somebody from truck 17 or whoever, somebody else.
Yeah.
So I turn around and crawl, and I make my way to a wall, and I make a right-handed turn. So as I make the right-handed search, I come across, it's a cold storage factory. So right where the doors meet, there's usually a metal plate that's on the ground. Well, they were removing that, and they put a piece of plywood over it. So you would have a 6-inch gap between the doors. So I remember being able to see down in the floor. So I'm like, damn, there's a hole in the floor. I better be careful, right? So I continue my right-hand search, and I get to another hole in the floor. So I'm like, damn, what is up here? I'm scanning with the camera, can't find any heat source, nothing. I look back, I see, I see some heads that are still by that front door, probably 10 feet in front of them or whatever. So I continue my right-hand search, and I come across another hole, and then I'm like, you know what? That's enough. So I call the emergency, Tower 34 to Battalion 23. Chief, I got holes on the second floor, multiple holes on the second floor. He gets back, he's up to radio, says, message received, I got a hole on the floor towards the Charlie side. So then I'm like, yo, you guys get up next to me, right? And let's make sure. So I see I see one body come, but then there's 2 other people standing by the doorway that I was. So I'm like, all right, well, here. It ends up being Timmy Quinn, and then we just continue, and then I'm like, you know what, let's get back to the door, because let's regroup or whatever, because then right off the bat, I hear Battalion 23 say, hey, everybody back out of the building. I'm thinking, all right, maybe he just wants to kind of regroup, figure out what's up, and then because it might be too dangerous. So I'm at the top of the stairs, can't really see anybody. I said, hey, Tower, let's meet out in in front of the truck. So I'm going down the stairs, those stairs that we built, and I go over to the right, and I can see somebody, like moving around. So I walk over there. He goes, he's right here. I'm like, who's right here? He goes, the fireman's right here. So when I was walking through, it looked like there was pits in the ground, right? Like, like if you go to Jiffy Lube, there might be some. You know what I'm saying? Where they were.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so I had noticed that, walking through when we were doing our primary on the first floor. So I look down in the hole, and there's a ladder that goes in there, but I don't see nothing. So I go, hey, go get the rope bag, right? And then, because I'm thinking maybe we just got to pull this guy up. Maybe because I can kind of see that there's light down there, so there's an opening. So maybe the guy fell down the hole, and now he's working his way. So I sent the guy that, I still don't know who that is. He ended up, so I climbed down the ladder. So when I get down to the bottom of the ladder, I see a pool of blood right at the bottom of where we were. Now I realize that it's an elevator shaft, right? So then I look out the opening, and I can see there's a fireman in a Stokes basket. So I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't hear a mayday, right? Because I'm on fire ground, and I didn't hear the mayday. So I'm like, I get up to the Stokes basket, and the person's faced up. And I'm like, who is it? They're like, and I'm still, I think it was Chasten. I think maybe he was one of the guys, because there was 3 of us that were down there. Or, yeah, 4 of us. So he's like, we got to get him out here. He's not breathing. And I'm like, who the fuck is that? I got to call the Mayday so that we're not, so we can get everybody situated. Yeah. And I looked, and now I've known Danny for probably 10 years at this point, and I couldn't tell it was him, right? But I had thought, because I had helped lift up the Stokes basket, and I love Mikey Torres to death, but I thought it was a larger boy, and I thought it was Mikey, right? Because Mike wasn't on the tower that day. He was on like truck 17 or
details.
Yeah, he was detailed out, but he was at that fire.
Yeah.
So I lift up the Stokes, and we're gonna move up the staircase there. Well, one of the guys trips, and then I got the full load, so I'm like, yeah, this is probably Mikey Torres, but I didn't want to call the Mayday because I don't see his coat, I couldn't see his helmet, none of that, right? And he wasn't wearing I didn't see if he didn't have the face piece on. So we get up to the top of the stairs, and I'm like, Mike Altman comes over. I go, Chief, we got a fireman down. He goes, all right, Brian, take him down the ramp there. The ambulance is waiting right there. So I'm like, okay. So we get Danny, which I find out now, later, get Danny on the stretcher and start moving him automatically. Now, once I get him on the ambulance or on the stretcher and medics got him, and I'm like, Tower 34 to 34 roof, check in. All right, so we had Farmer and I forget the other guy's name that was up there. He goes, Tower 34, we're par. I go, Tower 34 to Tower 34 roof. I need to know who, right? Because I want to know who's where, right? So they, Farmer and the other guy. So I'm like, all right, Tower 34 to Quinn, check in. So as I'm walking out, I see Quinn. So I'm like, okay, cool. So Tower 34 to 34 Capuano. Nothing, right? So I'm like, well, you know how it is. Sometimes the microphone falls off, so people don't hear it.
Tons of things, yeah.
That could have happened, right? So I'm making my way back to go back inside because in my mind I'm thinking this has all happened within 5 minutes. Not even,
so
what I'm saying?
Quick, yeah.
Quickly. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's down, where we were all mustering down at. So I call again and I go, hey Chief, I don't have Capuano. He goes, Brian. He goes, I think that was Capuano in the basket. I'm like, what? There's no way. So I turn around and I start heading, and the ammo's gone. Right? So I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Yeah. Right? So I'm walking back towards the building, and here they got his helmet. Right? So then I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so it just, cause it just doesn't. It's like you're in shock and you have no idea of like what just happened. Right? So. And one of the things, and back then, they probably didn't have a lot of experience. Well, I mean, obviously people have had experience with it, but we continue to work, right? Because now the tower had to pop out the windows and, all this other stuff. So we were still on scene for about an hour and a half.
God.
Yeah. And,
And then knowing that And
Yeah.
that's rough.
It was a tough thing, but it is what it is, and so anyway, so we finally get released, and so Farmer, who had been on Tower 34 his whole career, we were supposed to drive to, I think it was Christ or something like that, and we're going. I go, yo, where are we going? He goes to the hospital. I go, bro, you're going down South Chicago. He's like, oh, sorry, Lou. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody was in the mindset of what just transpired, So we ended up going to the hospital, and man, just, Mrs. Capuano showed up, and just the horrible, horrible day. So it took a couple weeks before I even found out what ended up happening, So what ended up happening was when I turned around to take a look and count heads, there was a guy that got behind Capuano. So it was 3 guys. It was Mitch, Quinn, Capuano, and then a guy from 46. So that's how we knew that where Danny was. So what ended up happening was, because there was a log jam, right, going up the stairs, Danny went over to the left to go up the stairs, and when he got to the top of the stairs, he went left because we were going right. And I had one of those flashlights, those Vulcan that's got the flashing lights on it. So, but that was the kind of guy that Danny was. He's like, hey, I know what we need to do. We need to get this search, the primary search, and we got to locate the fire. And so what ended up happening was they were cutting the steel, and the cork between the wall caught on fire. And the guys that were there knew about that because they sprayed Ansel. They had Ansel dust.
They tried to put it out.
They tried to put it out. Yeah. And so, trying to figure out, like, reconstruct this whole thing. Like, we went back inside, and I'm like, how did Danny? Yes. So what ended up happening? You could see the footprints in the Ansel dust of where it was going towards. And what ended up happening is they deconstructed the elevator shaft and left it open. So it looks like, from Danny's footprints, that he tripped over a piece of rebar that was sticking up in the out of the concrete, and because you could see his footprints right to it. Yeah. I talked to Jake. I don't know if you know Jake. He was and Jake said once I gave that radio communication that we had holes in the floor, like, he stopped. To this day, he'll tell you, like, hey, Brian, you saved my life. He goes, because as soon as you gave that, he goes, I stopped, because he was walking. Because we're trying to get shit done, right?
Yep. In a big area, big space. Sometimes we don't do exactly what we're supposed to do. They say if you can't see, crawl. Sometimes we don't.
I'm just going on record, crawl. Right, yes. In 25 years, and the amount of victims that I've come across, I never once found them floating in the air. You know what I'm saying? So, get on the floor. Right, my knees, my back hurts too. But guess what?
You'd rather have them hurt than not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but then that's how we found out. What transpired, and and I still reach out to Mrs. Capuano. Danny's anniversary was just passed, and. It's always it's 9 years already. Yeah. So, but yeah, we they're phenomenal people. Like the kids are doing well. The one son is still he's going to University of Tampa. The daughter,
that's awesome.
Yeah, his daughter is she's a nurse, and her son is actually getting ready to start the academy. Her oldest boy, he's starting. I think she said. This month.
I about to say, I think they're starting this month. Yeah, not this month. January.
In January? Okay.
Yeah.
She told me when
you know what? I'm sorry. It could be December. They might already be started on the EMS side. Because,
okay.
We got all these different buildings now. So
yeah. So I thought she said he's starting in December. So
that could be the case.
Yeah, but again, just a wonderful woman. She's got a home in Santa Maria Island, so I've tried to just keep in touch and see how the kids are doing, see how she's doing, and she still misses them.
What I mean? It's very unimaginable. We get the tragedies and everything, and it was like that tower truck. Now, we had Corey Yankum and Stringer Fire. That was my
Yesterday,
classmate.
right?
That was a couple days ago. Today's the 24th. 2 days ago.
2 days ago, yeah.
And I was telling people, like, before 9/11, that was the biggest firefighter death date. So, like, that date, the hairs always stand up on my arm because we weren't even at the academy for no time, and that happened. But yeah, the one thing that popped in my head when you were telling that story is when you called him over the radio, and we got the radios because of that fire. Because of I remember when I first came on the truck, it was the officer had a fire and the two roof guys. That was it. So you stuck with your officer and nobody else had a radio. They didn't want people on the radio. But, you know, we've come a long way. We're trying to still come long ways and learn things from other departments, learn from our mistakes, and make the job better. So
yeah, I remember we were with the Honor Guard. We were doing the memorial service, and that call came on over the radio. For Corey Income and Stringer. And I'll tell you what, that was. I still remember how cold it was during their services because that was right in the heart of December, right before Christmas, and
that was one of the worst. That was terrible for me. Just thinking of all the things that were going on, and if thinking about myself, how terrible could it be for the family? So let's move to a brighter topic before we get out of here.
Okay.
Because, we don't want to end on a down note. We want to end on a up high note.
Yeah, I mean, we're honoring Danny and his family and all those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. So, yes, there are a ton of things that we've learned, but those lessons learned have helped others.
Countless others. Like you said, he said, you saved my life when you called for those holes on the floor. That was, like I said, having those radios, the pass tags. Like I said, we've learned a lot, and hopefully we don't have to keep learning our lessons the hard way.
Absolutely.
We get to learn them a good way. But tell me, like I said, we're going to end on a high note. Tell me the most exciting thing about being in Florida versus Chicago. Just not the weather. Because I see you got that dope-ass pool.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we got a beautiful home, and we're very blessed with that. The most exciting thing, and what I really love about it is like I'm with a group of instructors. So in Pinellas County, there's 19 departments that are within Pinellas County, each their own department. And I have a group of 6 guys that I love to death because we share stories, we share experience, we share lessons learned, and the greatest thing to me about going out there is being able to, for instance, we were just talking about this Corey Income and Stringer fire. So I have a building that I can, it's a kind of like a warehouse that I can reproduce training scenarios in. So one of the things and lessons learned that I had heard, I wasn't at that fire, but some of the lessons learned from that was just the amount of people that were standing on top of the pile as they were working. So what I ended up doing is I am able to take those experiences and bring that training to the guys, right? So what I ended up doing was I got a heavy jersey barrier, and then I put one of our dummies underneath it, and then I had guys work and try and figure out a solution and how to remove that and not let them know what was going on. So the most exciting thing about being in Florida is that I get to bring all this experience that I got from just as far as leadership from the guys, as far as all the people that I've come across. And, my big thing is I can learn from you, you can learn from me, we can all learn together. You know what I'm saying? And bring in those live scenarios into the training, and then really just see the excitement in some of the guys. Like we did ladder rescues, and just going over all this stuff. And one of the guys is like, "This has got to be one of the best training." He goes, "Because everybody's so worried about getting hurt or whatever. Here, we're actually getting up there, climbing a ladder, bringing down a victim." He goes, the training before, we would just go to the ladder, we talk about it, and that was it. Yeah. So the most exciting thing about it for me is the opportunity to bring what I've experienced to Florida, and just see the excitement in everybody, and just reinvigorate everybody's desire.
Training drive, yeah, I love that answer.
Yes, sir.
That's probably one of the best answers I've heard to a question like that. I'm super passionate about training. Training is the bee's knees to me. I just like doing it. I like being physical, like learning new things, new techniques. My personal favorite drill is the Denver drill. That's when the guy was stuck in the tight hallway right there at the windowsill, and thinking like a person that's strong-willed, you think you can just reach in there, bend at your waist, pick them up, grab them, and pull them out. And it is impossible if you've ever tried it. So teaching people how to actually do that with a crew is like just seeing people's faces that are enthusiastic as you are in the training is always something that's appreciated. Like I said, I like that.
Yeah, brother, I love it, man. It's like you were just saying, and the enthusiasm, and when it clicks, and you learn that maneuver, right? Because everybody wants to learn the tricks of their trade. My thing is, let's learn the trade first. The tricks are going to come later.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to learn what you're doing before you get some tricks.
Exactly. But everybody appreciates that, and then when it clicks, and then they're like, "Oh man, I can do this, right? I can overcome this challenge if I just sit back, take a look at it, take a breath, and say, okay, here, let me learn, let me tap into that Rolodex of what I've learned in the past." So,
well, Bryan, I want to not take up too much of your time. I took an hour from you, and this is Christmas Eve, and you traveled, you up here to visit your family, and I stole you for a little while, but I really, really, really appreciate you being on. Like I said, when I was first getting ready to record, I'm restarting, and you're going to be the first episode of 2025.
Awesome.
So I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And if you got any more good stories, then we can do it over Zoom. But thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, man, I think this conversation, right, needs to happen. It needs to happen, right? Because maybe somebody out there will think about something, or something will click, brother, and I really appreciate what you do. So thank you for having me.
That's what I said. Somebody will hear something that they can pick up.
Absolutely.
Little jewels dropped in there. So
that's it.
All right. Thanks again.
All right, brother.
Get out of here. Bye-bye.
Best of luck to you. Stay safe.
Hey, so that was our first episode of 2025. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some information out of it. That's what this podcast is about. This particular episode was fire-based, but we also have other based podcasts on other things. We'll be talking with entrepreneurs and innovators, just people from all different walks of life. Kind of like your host. Anything that I'm into and people that I find interesting is who I usually reach out to try and get them on the show and have conversations. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you come back and tune in for more. If you want to find me in the other podcasts that I do, you can hit my link in bio. It is iamsevy.com. That's iamsevy.com. I also have a new blog that I just started, iamsevy.co. So same thing, just take off the M. And we do product reviews, book reviews, personal blogs about different subjects and topics. And that connects to my YouTube channel as well. There it is, Sevy I Am. Just YouTube, Sevy I Am, and you'll find a lot of our information there as well. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to have you on. If you're one of my guests coming up, I have a big list that I have to get to. And have a great and successful 2025. Hope to be speaking to you very soon in the near future. Bye.